And welcome live inside Delaware Live Sports. Again, not on the air live currently due to the pandemic, but we were all able to connect here via the airwaves on a phone conference call here at the studio. Nick Alessandrini joined by Delaware Live Sports' Glenn Frazer, Nick Halliday, Jason Winchell, and Benny Mitchell. And guys, playoff season is upon us here in the first state of Delaware. We all thought it would be a good idea since we haven't been able to have our 302 Sports Weekly every Wednesday night this season, and with good measure, for all of us to get together through the airwaves here to talk a little playoff preview as the football playoffs just around the corner. So let me start by saying, guys, how you doing this Wednesday afternoon?
It's cold. Yeah, it is cold.
It's even cold in beautiful Sussex County, Delaware.
In Middletown.
And I'm sure, Benny, you're wearing the flip-flops, right?
Nah, I did have to get out of them. When it hit under 40, no more sand, no more toes in the sand, baby.
There you go.
Well, guys, I thought it was a good idea to get together and talk about some of these upcoming playoff scenarios, kind of how we got here, look at some of the teams and some of the matchups, because I'm sure all of us very busy with these upcoming playoff games as we head into the weekend where we're loaded, jam-packed with games. And just to get things started again with everyone, football was a big topic of discussion this week, obviously with the DIAA and the selection process, and due to COVID, only 4 teams per division for the playoffs. And guys, it's been a tough. They had a tough meeting and a lot of discussion. Do you guys just want to start there and talk about how this kind of came to be, how the teams came to be? Jason, Glenn, I know you guys were involved with that.
Well, I was going to say the first thing was whether or not they were going to waive the minimum number of games for Delmar, since Delmar only played 4. And then once they decided on that, which they did, and then said their opponents could count, then it was a 3-way tie between Delmar, Woodbridge, and Red Lion for the 3rd, 4th, and 5th seeds. And then all of the tiebreakers, they got down to, opponent wins. And it went Red Lion first, obviously because they played 6 games, whereas Woodbridge played 5 games and Delmar 4. So that's how Red Lion got the 3 seed, Woodbridge got the 4 seed, and Delmar was left out.
The big deal about Delmar and allowing them to be part of the process affected Division 1.
Yeah.
Because if they had not allowed that waiver for Delmar, then that would not have counted for a 5th win for Caesar Rodney, which would have affected both Sussex Central and Smyrna.
Right, and it would have changed their seedings, right, Glenn? I believe Smyrna would have dropped to 2, and Sussex Central would have been out, right?
Would have been out.
Right.
Yeah. Correct.
And Hodgson Tech would have been in.
Or everything a little bit different this year, going to be more interesting than it's been in these past couple years. But we'll jump right into D2 and get started with our first matchup on Friday, December 11th. And we're going to be there for this one. Howard, they're coming in as the number 2 seed, 6-0, undefeated on the season. A very talented football team, and they're going to take on number 3, Red Lion, who you guys just talked about a little bit, coming in at 5-1. We haven't had a lot of chance to see a lot of Howard, but obviously we know they're a pretty good football team. They get the number 2 seed. Red Lion, obviously, we've seen a little bit of them. What do you guys have seen about Red Lion this year? Nick, you want to start?
So I've seen them a couple of times. I just recently went and watched them play against St. Elizabeth's, which they had a big blowout against them. It was almost a running clock in the first half, but I think they have one of the top 3, maybe some have argued one of the top players, top maybe 1 or 2 in the state in their quarterback over at Red Line. And he's just had a great year. It's Gavin Shields. He's a quarterback, and he also plays DB. But they're very athletic. I've seen them play against Conrad as well. They have Brandon Anderson at running back, who's a really good player. He's a senior this year, too. John Purnell at wide receiver and DB, who is going to have a big test against Howard. But they do have a very athletic team, and they have some size. They have some big kids that are on the line in Caden Bernal, Carter Soraka, who's just a freshman, but he plays. He's a big kid on the line. You can't miss him. We actually got to talk to Coach Anderson for a minute at the halftime of St. Elizabeth game, And he kind of thought the same thing, that he would probably be seeing Howard. And, you know, we all know there's not a lot of film on him, like you said, Nick, and not a lot of people have been able to see him because of their odd times and where they're playing and stuff this year. But he thought that he might match up with them pretty well. That will determine, and we'll see how that goes. When I'm looking at the Howard scores right now, there ain't a single game where the other team was even within a 2-touchdown score. When I look at their games, I mean, 48-12, 42-7, 52-0, 54-0. The only score that Howard had that was a decent score was a McKean forfeit at 2-0. I mean, they just really manhandled everyone, including a couple of D1 schools and Apo High School, you know?
Yeah, last year, you can talk about Howard, though. They win the state title in that thriller against Woodbridge. And who were the names we talked about last year in that game? Kevin Ignudo, Tyre Spencer, Donovan Cartwright. And guess who all are back this year in that offense? It's Kevin Ignudo, Tyre Spencer, and Donovan Cartwright. So they're returning a state championship team, and they're returning a lot of talent. And that's not even getting down to that huge line of theirs.
That's true. I think their biggest loss was Carvin Reeves, but obviously this year they didn't notice it.
Right, you're right.
No, and it's interesting because Howard plays a lot of those Flight B teams, but they did try and test themselves with that they threw in that Apo game, and I think that was a chance to give them a little test, and they passed it. Meanwhile, Red Lion, their toughest game was Archmere, and they took them to overtime. So they were able to play with the 1 seed down there on their home field, losing in double overtime by a point, I believe, a missed 2-point conversion.
They actually went for 2, and there was a penalty, and then it ended up forcing them to where they couldn't get it. And that's not for us to say whether that call was controversial or not. They played them very strong. I remember getting a couple updates from that game. And Redline definitely was right there with Archmere, so that kind of gives you some sort of barometer on where they are and how they play. But they do have some athletic players, and like you said, Benny, it's going to be tough facing those guys over, having to stick Donovan Cartwright, and Tyre Spencer can sling it. Rashawn Matthews Jr. is a quarterback there. Of course, we know his dad was a really good player back in the day at William Penn and played at Dell State. So they have, a lot of athletes, and Benny said it, they got a big line.
And, guys, Jason, you talked a little bit about the schedule for Howard. Like, Nick, you talked about the scores. Not really many contests in there, or it was very competitive. Glenn, do you maybe see that as something that would benefit Red Lion, Howard's schedule? They haven't seen too many tough teams? I'm not saying Red Lion has, but is that something that maybe could benefit Red Lion come this Friday night?
Well, I think that last game against Apo, and you guys already alluded to it, was a really good litmus test for Howard. Not so much that Apo has a dominating offense, but they have a solid defense. This was no slouch Apo team, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they played Middletown to 21-0, so they only gave up 3 scores to the Cavaliers. So to have 42 points, Howard doubled up what Middletown did against Apo's defense. This could end up being the Howard Invitational in Division 2.
Well, there you have it. We talked a little bit about that again. Howard, your number 2 seed, 6-0, taking on Red Lion Friday night, 6 o'clock. Red Lion, your 3 seed. And that one, again, will be live from Abyssinios Stadium. And now, fellas, let's take a look at our number 1 versus number 4 matchup. Archmere, undefeated on the season as well, 7-0. They get your top seed. Woodbridge, undefeated as your 4 seed, 5-0. Obviously, we'll be playing 5 games this year. And we've got a chance to see these 2 teams multiple times. And, guys, let's start with Woodbridge. Benny, I'll start with you. Mr. Woodbridge down there, number 4, coming in. Just talk a little bit about this football team and the season they've had.
Let's start off with the Woodbridge defense. A lot of times when we talk Woodbridge, we talk offense. You're talking about a defense that's allowed 10 points all season. 10 points all season. 7 of them came late in the game against Caravel in the last game of the season, and 3 of those came against Indian River. And the Indian River was a field goal off a penalty and Indian River couldn't move the ball and kick the field goal because they were right in there. So they just, they stifle teams. Laurel, who was a pretty good season this year, was unable to get a first down against Woodbridge. You're going to get to see a young man by the name of Wyatt Wright, the junior linebacker, and he passes the eye test, and he passes the test on the field. He's had a great year. And another guy by the name of Orm, the defensive end, defensive tackle, another big kid that they like to play in the opponent's backfield.
Anyone else want to touch on Woodbridge? Yeah, Nick, go ahead.
Well, just, looking at their schedule, Benny, and they had some games that got canceled, obviously, for COVID. They didn't get to play Delmarva, and it looks like, Delmar, I apologize, but it looks like Laurel might have been their only real contest. Is that going to matter going into the playoffs if they really haven't played too much stiff competition?
I talked to Jed Bell about that game. If you go back, and we carried that game. It's on film. If you go back and look at it, Laurel was sticking 8 people in the box every play. And sometimes 9. They were just packing between the tackles. And what Jed Bell told me was he was going to see how tough his kids are. He put them to a test, and they spent most of the night running between the tackles. And they held the ball for like 80% of the game. Woodbridge just possessed the ball, 3 to 4 yards of play. You had the one touchdown run by Jordan Evans, the quarterback. I think it was play of the week for that week. But they just, they can line up and they can just move the ball down the field slowly if they have to. And then Jaden Bacon, man, he can strike quick.
Yeah, we saw some highlights from that team. I know they have some very good athletes down there and some players, so it's going to be exciting.
And if you go look at some comparison, and you have to draw, and I know comparisons aren't always great to use from team to team, but Lake Forest loses to St. Mark's trying to go for 2 up there in Newark, and then Lake Forest comes down and first game for Woodbridge with 2 practices, 35-0 Woodbridge. And then you have the tight game between Red Line and St. Mark's. So, yeah, I think Woodbridge is going to come as advertised. If they can play mistake-free, which they have a little trouble doing, Woodbridge is going to get their penalties. But if they can play limited mistakes, limited penalties, they're going to be tough.
And now we look across the way at who they're taking on, the team that got the number 1 seed here in Division II, a team that could arguably played, maybe the toughest schedule among the teams that we're looking at here. They were a full 7-0 with wins over St. Mark's, DMA, and now they get Woodbridge. Obviously, talked about a real talented team, but Archmere, they're the number 1 seed here in Division II this year. Jason, I know you've kept up a little bit with them. Do you want to talk about their season and how that number 1 seed came to fruition?
First of all, a great job by Coach Belize and his staff. They replaced a lot of talent from last year, and I think a lot of people were not expecting big things from that team, and he's come in, and I think their key is defense. Their defense is real strong, especially in the linebacker position, and they're going to have to try and limit Woodbridge attack, and if they can, I think they can keep it close, and then maybe playing on their home field by getting that 1 seed can help them out here at the end of the game. But a really good team, a fundamental team. They were in a lot of close games, which I think will help them in a close game because they scored. They were trailing against St. Mark's and scored on a 76-yard pass play at the end of that game with a minute to go to steal that win on the road down there at the Graveyard. And St. Mark's finished 6-1. That was their only blemish. And then they had a close game against DMA at their place, and their defense held pat there at the end on a DMA drive. And they're not undefeated for no reason. They're a really good team.
If I could just add one thing about this matchup. Last week when I was at Sussex Central, about the third quarter, I was delivered a oyster fritter sandwich through the press box, and 2 years ago, Woodbridge brought scrapple sandwiches to the press box. I'm kind of wondering what are the chances that a cheesesteak from Claymont Steak Shop is going to show up on Saturday. So we got Rapid Scrapple versus Claymont Steakhouse.
There you go. And they can walk it right on over to you, Benny. It's not that far away.
That's what I hear. I'm going to have to call delivery.
Just from paying attention to some of the games for Archmere, and then getting Mike Lang, who probably would be a little better for all of us. Obviously, he can't make it today, but they have some players that can make some big plays down there at Archmere too. With Connor Udovich, who's been on our top plays probably every week.
Yeah, he's awesome. He's a really good
Michael
linebacker.
Michael Malamese is a really good running back too, and linebacker. I mean, I watched him last year against Woodbridge.
I think athletic-wise, they might match up with them pretty well. But like you said, the one thing I might kind of give Woodbridge the benefit, and not taking anything away from Archmere, but the toughness down there at Woodbridge and the I always look at the feeder pattern, man. The Little League football teams down there, man, they just come and know how to play, and these kids come in from down there at Woodbridge and Delmar, and they're just already football smart too. So we'll see. I think it's going to be a great matchup, and unfortunately, we're probably going to miss half of it, but we're going to try to watch as much as we can, getting ready for the field hockey state championships. But I'm excited for this game.
Yeah, and before we move on, go ahead, Benny. Go ahead, Benny.
That's not any Sussex County. It's Western Sussex County, man. They're growing tough over there.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
And before we move on, Glenn, anything stand out to you in this matchup? Is there anything you're looking for in particular? It could be a main theme here.
Didn't see either one of these play this year, but I'll echo the sentiments of Benny and Nick as to the kind of program they've built at Woodbridge over the last 6-7 years in one of the smallest school districts in the state. They have been successful. They found success, and that winning tradition has just breeded the young kids coming right on through from Pop Warner all the way into middle school and high school. I think this could be the closest game of the weekend, and I would not be surprised if this goes into overtime. I know Archmere usually has a pretty good kicker. I don't know what Woodbridge has. Benny would have to let me know on that, but it could come down to a kick.
Woodbridge has adopted the Smyrna earthquake offense for extra points. And so they're going to be going for two. They have one, but you're going to see Woodbridge going for two, most likely, after touchdowns.
Well, there you have it. Our D2 matchups again. 4 teams making it this year. Number 1, Archmere versus number 4, Woodbridge. That game Saturday, December 12th. Again, Benny will be on tap for that one. And then Friday night, December 11th, Howard, number 2, taking on number 3, Red Line at 5-1. So only one loss among those 4 teams here as we head into the Division 2 playoffs. So now, guys, we'll transition into Division 1, which was very, I guess, another interesting how they came to. We talked a little bit about how they did the team selection. So number 1 seed was the Smyrna Eagles, 6-0 undefeated so far this season for them, and they'll take on Friday night number 4 seed who got in at the number 4 Sussex Central. Benny, the Golden Knights at 5-2. Talk a little bit about how they were able to grab that 4 seed.
Well, that 4 seed came over. They went 5-2, and 2 tough losses, and one to Smyrna. And Glenn had the game. Nick had the game. Central had Smyrna on the ropes, and they've done this before. They were the one hell of a conference team that beat Smyrna a couple years ago when they're on that win streak. The Central defense is tough, and they due to the Delmar getting the waiver, Caesar Rodney gets the 5th win to count. And that gets them in as the number 4 seed over Hodgson Votech with that one win. They had the bonus point, actually. It was more the bonus point that they got from Caesar Rodney getting 5 wins. But I think the bigger loss for them that put them in this position to where they, we'll say snuck in, was the loss to Caesar Rodney on the road. They had the ball late and just a couple penalties, and they couldn't move it. And Caesar Rodney wins at home, and Sussex Central falls to 5-2. But they play solid defense. P.J. Stratton, as everybody's watched him, he put the Salesianum game to sleep with his 94-yard kick return. They're slow moving. They're like Woodbridge. They like to possess the ball and move it downfield, but they can strike quick with Stratton. And their quarterback Gardner has been really getting into he's been throwing here as of late. Zamir Gardner, he hit Deuce McGee over a touchdown pass in the game last week against Milford. So they're looking pretty good coming in. Watch Deion Stevens at fullback. Him and Stratton both equal about 800 yards on the season. And defensively, you saw what their defense did in 2018. And it's like this year it's been like a learning process for them. They had to plug a lot of holes, but Sussex Central, their defense has gotten better each and every week.
Yeah, now we'll look to, again, Benny, you said Nick and Glenn on the call for some of those, or for that game, the rematch. But before we get before that rematch, do you, Glenn and Nick, just talk a little bit about the Smyrna team in general. You've had a chance to see them. They're the number 1 seed this year in the playoffs. How explosive is that offense in person?
Well, most high school teams in Delaware run first and pass second. The Smyrna Eagles are the exception to the rule, and they're a pass-first team all the way. Aiden Sanchez has passed for almost 2,050 yards in just 6 games. That works out to 340 yards a game, and he has a ton of talented wide receivers that get him yards after the catch. The one thing I was impressed with the last game we had them against Caesar Rodney, and Nick can attest to this, he was hitting receivers in stride. 80-yard touchdown pass, bombs it down the field, hits the kid right in stride. 86 yards to Ymir Knight on a crossing pattern, hits him right in stride. And with the speed that his wide receivers have, if you hit them in stride and they've got to step on a secondary personnel, they're gone. 23 touchdown passes, only 4 picks for Sanchez. A lot better numbers than his junior year. And he has, you just see the maturity in him. He hangs in the pocket till the last second. They don't have to really run the ball that much, and when they do, they have serviceable running backs. And Will Knight's younger brother, Wayne, who has learned a few things from his older brother, believe me. He's very patient and waits for the blocking to develop. And then Dominic Galban has come along, too, and really added a nice start to the run game. But just so many talented personnel on the field for Smyrna offensively. And let's not forget the defense. They're a pretty good defense as well, with Eric Larson and Ziadi Carson and company.
Yeah, Benny talked about that Smyrna-Sussex Central game that me and Glenn called, and that game came all the way down to the last play with probably under 2 minutes left. And, the DB for Sussex Central tried to jump the route for an interception, and it was gobbled up by the Smyrna receiver and taken down for the touchdown. And that was Jermaine. But one thing, and Benny does talk about that Sussex Central is methodical. They can run the clock out. They can do that, and they did it. We saw it in the game. We saw it at Sussex Central.
They sat on the ball.
They literally ran a full quarter and a quarter of the second quarter off the clock so that Salesianum couldn't have the ball. But, Glenn, you can attest to this. They can hit big plays big because we saw that in the Smyrna game where we thought they were going to slow the ball down, but no. P.J. Stratton, Stevens, guys like that can hit the big plays for them also.
Yeah, and Gardner, the quarterback, he doesn't throw that often, maybe 6-7 times a game, but he picks his spots perfectly. He manages the offense well, and you got to keep your eye on him because you don't fall asleep. He'll run that bootleg, and he got some big gains as well. Stevens and Stratton both broke some big runs off against Smyrna, so it was surprising to us that Smyrna actually owned time of possession the first half of that game because of so many short passes. I think Sussex Central's secondary is really going to have to get up and play on the Smyrna receivers, and they're going to have to get a rush. They got to get pressure on quarterback Sanchez and not let him sit back there. The more time you give him, he is going to beat you all the time.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and one thing, I was at the Smyrna Slade-Adam game, and like Glenn said, they throw a lot of those passes close to the line of scrimmage and let their playmakers do the work. So it's not like, but they also can go quick and throw a bomb and score within 30 seconds. So it depends how, Coach Judy sees the defense and how he wants to attack it. But they're very dangerous. They don't have to run the ball as much because a lot of their pass is screen passes and wide receiver screens, and it's almost like a running play.
And you heard.
Yeah, looking forward to this matchup because really the last time these two met, Nick and I talked about it. This game was headed to overtime. It was going to go OT because Smyrna was just feeding the ball to Wayne Knight. He ran it 3 straight times. I think he only gained maybe 11 yards, and it looked like to us they were just fine with running out the clock and going to OT. But then they threw that little hitch pass, and Jermaine Earl made the acrobatic play, and then he made a fantastic run down the line, cutting to the middle of the field and into the opposite side of the field, and all of a sudden you're at the 5-yard line. So that pretty much sealed the deal.
Mm-hmm. This game goes to overtime this weekend. I think Central's better suited for the overtime rules from the 10-yard line because Smyrna loses a lot of that open field that they use so well. Only having 20 yards to work in. And I think that that could be, you brought that up, Glenn. That could be key if this game goes to overtime this weekend. Sussex Central's from the 10, look, they're going to try, 4 plays. And the Central's also got a couple good kickers. They don't just have one good kicker. They have 3 kickers that can kick from outside 30 yards.
Yeah, you're right. You lose that separation when you get down inside the 10. So this is going to be a great matchup for round 2.
And one more thing. One of the hardest things to do in football is to beat a team 2 times in 1 year. And this is a short year. So, it's, not that it can't be done. We've seen it done several times. But, it's hard to do because this team not only got to see you once, they got to feel it once. So, getting over a team 2 times, Smyrna wins this game. Give them a lot of credit because, Sussex Central always brings them their toughest game each year. So for Smyrna to if they can beat them twice in this season, hats off to them.
And quickly before we advance here,
I agree with you on that.
Yeah, as you said, hard to beat a team twice. And quickly before we wrap up this matchup, Glenn, you talked a little bit about the your, I guess, key to the game would be getting pressure on Aiden Sanchez. Is that the main key of the game for everyone here? Is before we move on, or what do you guys see as being the key to victory, or what's going to be the difference in this matchup here?
Well, if you talk about pressure, if you're going to talk about pressure on the quarterback, you got to talk about Jacob Dempsey. He's just named first-team all-conference defensive end, and that's what he's done this year for Sussex Central. He has put pressure on the quarterback. Also, Diego Rodriguez-Costa is another one. Now, those are their bookend defensive ends, and watch those guys. Now, the key for Sussex Central was Katai Tilley, their 3-year starter at middle linebacker. He left the game on the golf cart with something with his ankle. I talked to him after the game. He said he felt good, but it's all going to come down. He's getting MRIs earlier this week. So, without Katai Tilley, they'll go with Joey Finney, who ended up having 6 or 7 tackles against Milford. But that would be a huge loss for Sussex Central.
Yeah, I'd like to see him back. I hope they're back at full strength because I really am excited about calling this game, and I definitely would like to see it at full strength for both teams. I think I go back to this one with the key for me to this game is I thought what we would have in the first game is both teams trying to stop the big play from each team. And if Sussex Central can stop the big play, I think they got a chance to win this game.
So there you have it. Number 1, Smyrna, again, Friday, December 11th, Smyrna, and number 4, Sussex Central. A very good first round, or I guess semifinal matchup, if you will now. That's where we are here in 2020 as we progress into the football playoffs. And on to our next matchup, also a rematch of a game we had earlier in the season. Number 2, Middletown, they finished their season undefeated. And how about this? Coach John Wilson has the St. George's Hawks in here at the number 3 seed at 5-2. Jason, we had a chance to see this game, or we had this game earlier this year, but you've seen, I believe, St. George's at least once this season. How about that? Them getting the number 3 seed in there, they squeak in here over teams like Hodson. St. George's, they had a good year this year.
Yeah, they did, and credit to Coach Wilson, but Nick, they're built on that offense and defensive line. And they get a lot of pressure on a team, and they control that line of scrimmage, and that's going to be key against Middletown. They're going to have to control that line of scrimmage because even though their offense and defensive line were great all year, they struggled in that Middletown game and seemed like Middletown's offense and defensive line beat them to the punch. So Coach Wilson's going to have to find that offensive line and defensive line to get pressure and to be able to control the ball against that Middletown team.
And Middletown, they looked really good this year. Colby Chambers, second year. He played last year when Braden Davis was injured, and now this year Braden Davis heads down to Florida. In steps Colby Chambers, and not really missing a beat. He's looked great throwing the football. They've got 2 very talented backs in Pearson and Ben Martin returning back from injury a few weeks ago. They both look spectacular on the ground. The line has been good offensively and defensively. They've kind of been clicking on all cylinders. In that rematch, it went back, or in the first game, I should say, they went back and forth a lot. Middletown kind of held on for most part of the game, but St. George's had their fair share of big plays and put some points on the board. Benny, Nick, Glenn, any of you guys had a chance to see Middletown this year?
I went back and looked at the game that you called and watched the whole stream. What was interesting to me was St. George's typically a run-first football team. When they got behind Middletown late in the game by 20 points, you kind of felt like, well, maybe this game's over. But they did some things in the passing game. I don't know whether Middletown got too soft defensively in the secondary. Nick, you called the game. Mm-hmm. From what I could see, they just got some athletic plays from their backs and running backs and the quarterback, obviously, and got back in that ball game and almost stole it from Middletown. But I think that the key for St. George's to me is can't make mistakes. You can't turn the ball over. You can't allow a block punt to start out the game. You got to play a mistake-free game. And then for Middletown, Chambers, his ability to extend a play against St. George's was fantastic. He was several times so cool in the pocket. Pressure was coming, and he just managed to get away from people and find Zaire Tart or some other receiver.
Yeah, and I'll say that, absolutely, Glenn. Colby Chambers, and this is actually what both quarterbacks did so well in that matchup, was their pocket awareness was good. They were able to get out of the pocket and find their receivers down the field. The quarterbacks did it for both teams multiple times. Nair Wilson, a nice flick of the wrist. You saw a couple deep balls out of him to some people out of the backfield, some receivers. Like you said, Glenn, I don't know if they got soft in the secondary. I guess so, as they were up. They did hold on for the most part for the entire game, but like you said, a couple more of those big plays in St. George's. Like you said, if they start that game off just a little bit better, we could be having a different story. We did the St. George's Appoquinimink game, the first game of the year, Jason, and we talked to Coach Sibley. It was the opener before they'd even played any games. And he told us that this line that they have offensively and defensively might be the best line he's ever coached. And that's quite the compliment from Coach Sibley. At St. Mark's in 2010, you had 5 All-Staters on that offensive and defensive line. And that's a great compliment. And he said, and that's how you win football games. So if St. George is able, like you said, Jason, to control the trenches, get some pressure on Colby Chambers, don't let him escape out of the pocket and make some of those throws to those receivers who, like you mentioned, Glenn, do a great job of getting open down the field. Zaire Tart may be the most impressive player I've had a chance to see in person this year.
Yeah, Nick, you are so right with that, and like you said, that's high praise coming from Coach Sibley because he coached some great offensive and defensive lines at his time at St. Mark's, and now at St. George's, he says he has his best one ever. I mean, that's huge, and it showed all season long, especially that last week against Sally's, when, if they won, they knew they were probably going to get in, and it was a close game, and at the end, they were able to go on a long drive and pound the ball behind that offensive line.
So to talk about when Glenn said that he was surprised that St. George's was a run first, if I'm correct, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, the main running back of St. George's is Giovanni Sanchez. Mm-hmm. And
right.
If I'm correct, did he hurt his ankle in the Hodson game the week before Middletown?
I'm not sure. I mean, he definitely played a majority of that game, or at least I don't know if they didn't give or hand the ball off for that reason.
I do know that he was out for a couple of games against Mount Pleasant. I went up and tried to catch him at a game I wanted to watch, and he was out with a ankle issue, and he didn't come back for a couple of games. So, I don't know if he was 100%, but going into this week, I know he's well rested. So maybe they'll see more of a ground control game with them. But falling behind against Middletown 20-0 is going to make any team pass because that's going to be hard to make up 20 points against Middletown's defense, no matter who you are.
And I'll say this: one of the most impressive parts. Go ahead, Glenn.
Go ahead. You finish your thought.
I was just going to say one of the most impressive things that I've seen out of Middletown this year has been their special teams. They've been fantastic returning kicks and punts, but more impressively on blocking kicks and punts. I want to say statistically they have about 6 blocked kicks on the year when we went over their stats before the last game. And then they had one that same game, a blocked punt and a touchdown. So that's something to look out for as well.
I do remember that now, yeah.
Yeah, that's why I say you can't. Well, this is typical of any team or game. You can't make mistakes. And whoever's going to play the mistake-free game obviously is going to have the advantage. Another interesting facet of that first game between Middletown and St. George's was Middletown could not run the ball until late in the game. St. George's pretty much shut the run game down and forced Middletown to pass. I believe it was it Pearson late in the game that finally got some big runs?
Yeah, I think so, because I don't believe Ben Martin was back, or is back for that game.
Yeah, I think Pearson broke off a couple of big runs when they were trying to hold on to the ball and run the clock out late in the game. But until that, mid-late third quarter, Middletown could not run the ball against St. George's. So that's an adjustment that the Cavaliers are going to have to work on for the rematch.
Yeah, and that reminds me another thing when we were doing that game. Before the game, we talked to one of the assistant coaches for St. George's, and I asked him, just joking around, but I said, what's going to be the theme? I said, what do you guys have to do tonight to beat Middletown? And he said it all relies in the secondary, and that was before the game. And obviously the secondary didn't play a great game that game against Middletown, as Colby Chambers, like you said, Glenn, was fantastic through the air as well. And hopefully that's going to be obviously one of their main focal points as they come into this rematch. So number 2, Middletown.
Another good game I wish I could be at and watch, but unfortunately we all can't be at all these games, right?
Yeah, too many games to get around.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to calling the game with Glenn. I haven't been to Cavalier Stadium since 1993, so it's been over 25 years since I've been there. But I know hopefully things will improve, because the last time I was there, I think I had to walk over a mile to get into the stadium. I think they've torn that school down since then, haven't they, Glenn?
Yes, that school has been leveled. You can still park back in that area, obviously. We shouldn't have a problem parking this time, but you and I'm sure will get there early enough to get a good spot. Now, that's my alma mater. I got a little bit of pull up there, so if we get the cowbells up in that press box or we got people standing in the way, I can handle that stuff, buddy.
Just remember to turn before the construction.
Yeah, now we got to work on the camera upstairs. I saw a lot of obstruction on that, so we got to work with the coaches up there and make sure they're not in the way.
Yeah, everybody likes to lean over and get in your way in the camera view there. It's hard to try to tell people to stay back and they can still see the field. So that's a tight upstairs area press box with a lot of cameras and a lot of coaches.
So
we'll make it work, buddy.
So again, that matchup again coming at you on Saturday night. Number 2 Middletown 6-0, number 3 St. George's 5-2. A rematch of both of our Division I playoff games. So guys, now we just went over the two divisions of the playoffs here. Now we'll just go around quickly. What game stands out to you the most in round 1? What game are you looking forward to the most? Even if you're not be able to call it or see it, what game excites you the most looking at these first round matchups? Nick, let's start with you.
Sussex Central Smyrna. I mean, I'm going to be able to call it again. Me and Glenn had a great game with it when we called it down at Sussex Central. This time we'll be playing on the home turf at Smyrna, and I know it's going to be another good game, and it's one that I'm looking forward to calling with Glenn.
Benny, what about you? Any games stand out to you?
Well, first be the one I'm going to call Woodbridge and Archmere. Statistically, they're very much alike. The way they play, they're very much alike. They depend on their defense, and they have a good offense. They're a little different in offense. Archmere does like to throw the ball. Let's see if Woodbridge gets some pressure on them. But they really defensively is where those two teams like to win games. But I'm going to keep my other eye on the Smyrna Sussex Central game. I mean, the last 4 years, they played some pretty good, 3 really good games in the last 4 years. And like I said, it's just like the Middletown St. George's, rematch games are always fun to watch.
Glenn, what game you got circled here in round 1?
Oh, man, I think both of those Division I rematches should be fantastic games. I look for them both to be close. Looking forward to going back to the old stomping grounds at Cavalier Stadium, and looking forward to working with Benny on that one. I think the last time we worked together was a state championship game last year when Hodson beat Middletown. And also looking forward to Nick again on that Smyrna Sussex Central rematch. 4 very good coaches in those 2 Division I semifinal matchups, and it should be a blast.
No doubt about it. And Jason, just to cap things off here, what about you?
I'm going to go Claymont, Woodbridge, Archmere. I think that, like Benny said, 2 similar teams. Both, the bread and butter is their defense, but both teams can move the ball, and both teams can score. And I think it's going to be a good game, and I think that game can really come down to, the final couple minutes. And like Glenn said earlier, maybe even go into overtime.
Yeah, that's for sure. Some great ones here in the round 1. Obviously only 4 teams per division, but it turned out to be some fantastic matchups all the way around here in Division I and Division II. And now before we sign off here on Delaware Live Sports, again, Nick Alessandrini, Benny Mitchell, Nick Halliday, Glenn Frazer, and Jason Winchell. Guys, I know some of us are calling some of these games. Benny, let's start with you and Howard and Red Lion. Who you going with there?
I'm taking the Wildcats. I watched them last year play in Laurel, and I watched them last year play in the state championship. They're a big team, and they're explosive. I've only got to see Red Lion on film, but I think just the depth and the size of Howard puts them in the finals.
Nick Halliday, Howard, Red Lion.
Yeah, unfortunately, the good news is I'm not calling that game either, so we can pick it. I have to agree with Benny here. Red Lion is not a bad team. They've had a good year. They've played some people tough. I just think that Howard's on another level. I've always said that Howard's one of those teams that you never want to see in the playoffs. Coach Dan Ritter and his coaching staff do a great job down there with those kids that he has down at Howard, and I just think at the end of the day they're probably going to be just a little better, and I like Howard in that matchup.
Now, Jason, me and you will be there on Friday night. Glenn, what about you? Who do you like there?
I'm going chalk. Howard.
Howard paper, across the board.
It should be the least closest game of 4. Congratulations to both teams for qualifying. good to see Red Lion in the tournament for the first time in a while. But I think Howard's got a little bit too many horses. So I go Wildcats.
All right, on now to our other matchup, Division II, number 1, Archmere, number 4, Woodbridge. Benny, you'll be on the call, so you're left out here. Jason, let's start with you. Archmere, Woodbridge. Who do you like in that tough one?
I think I'm going to give the favor to Woodbridge. They're going to win on a 2-point conversion. I'm going to go. They'll score late in the game, and the 2-point conversion will be the difference. They'll win by 1.
Woodbridge by 1 for Jason. Nick Halliday.
This is probably, I don't know, I mean, I get to call the Sussex Central Smyrna game, and that was my game to pick, but I think the most intriguing game in this weekend is this one, and I agree that both teams are probably really similar, comparable, but I'm with Jason. I think Woodbridge squeaks this out. Just like Glenn said, man, they just have a great football program, and they breed winners down there.
Glenn, Archmere, Woodbridge.
Jason stole my thunder. I think this, too, could be a 2-point conversion that decides the game. So I go Blue Raiders by a single point, but it would not surprise me if it were the other way around.
There you have it, Woodbridge. I'll go against the grain here, because if everybody goes Woodbridge, Archmere will win. That's just how it goes, and everybody picks against the grain. So I'm going to go Archmere here and split it up a little bit and take the Aux in that one. So guys, now we're going to head over to Division 1, Smyrna, Sussex Central. So Glenn and Nick, you guys are on the call for that one, so you will not be picking here. Benny, let's start with you. Smyrna and Sussex Central, maybe the best matchup here in round 1. There's some great ones, so what are you thinking?
Man, put me on the spot. Now, I'm going to go back to week 6, and I made the mistake of picking against Sussex Central in the Castle versus Slazy Annam, and almost had to enter the stadium in disguise, being a Sussex Central alumnus. But this game's in Smyrna, so I'm free. I got a little more wiggle room to pick this game. I think Sussex Central is dangerous in a rematch. But playing on the turf as opposed to the grass down there at Sussex Central, I'm just going to take the speed of Smyrna in this game. I think Glenn alluded to it earlier. You cannot let their receivers get open in space, and you take them off that Bermuda grass and you put them on the carpet. I think Smyrna wins this, but I think it's going to be another 1-touchdown game.
On to you, Jason. Benny takes Smyrna by a touchdown. Jason, what are you thinking?
I think it's close to the same thing. I think the playing on turf favors Smyrna a little bit, and I do think it's going to be a close game. And I think Smyrna is going to win, and maybe a close one that comes down to the end. But I like Smyrna with their speed on the turf.
Yeah, I got to put me on the spot. I didn't want to go against the grain, or I went against the grain last time. This time, I'm going to go ahead and side with you guys. I'm going to take Smyrna as well, so give Sussex Central some bulletin board material. Well, there you have it. So Sussex Central and Smyrna, that one again Friday, December 11th at 7 p.m. And now on to our second matchup of Division 1, rematch number 2, Middletown, number 3, St. George's. Glenn and Benny, you guys will be on the call for that one. So I'll start this time with Nick Halliday, Middletown, St. George's. Nick, what do you got?
Well, like Benny said, it is tough to beat a team twice. After a short season and you've seen them already. I think the difference is going to be, just like Benny said for Smyrna, is you're playing at Middletown now, and they're tough to beat there. The crowd, the cowbells, everything that they have, the ambiance of the whole place. Colby Chambers, Zaire Tart being probably one of the most electric players in the state. I do like St. George's. They're a good team. Coach John Wilson's done a good job down there. I just think Middletown has too much for them, and I think Middletown pulls it out at home.
All right, Middletown for Nick. Jason, Middletown, St. George's. We had the original matchup, round 2 here. Who do you got in the rematch?
I just like Middletown. They've been there almost every year. They're in the playoffs every year. They're almost hosting a game at home. I think their experience will help them against the St. George's team. Coach Wilson's done a great job down there, but this is since he's been coaching, the first trip to the playoffs here, and you go up against a team like Middletown. I think experience plays a key in a close game, but I like the Cavaliers at home with the experience.
All right, I'm going to go with Middletown as well, go against St. George's here, and it should be a great game, and I expect it to be very close. Just Middletown, I had a chance to see them a few times this year, and they've looked very, very good, and I expect that to continue for them to click on all cylinders as they would make their way into the playoffs. All right, guys, there you have it. A little playoff preview, if you will, here from all of us at Delaware Live Sports. Nick Alessandrini, Nick Halliday, Glenn Frazer, Benny Mitchell, and Jason Winchell. And some big matchups will be coming to you guys live this weekend. And Nick, we go over the broadcast schedule, but all 4 of these games will be broadcast, correct?
Yeah, all 4 semifinals will be broadcasted, and then, of course, the championships are still to be determined, which will be broadcasted as well. Mm-hmm. But we don't know where those times and events will be. But, yeah, all 4 will be broadcasted on the NFHS network under the DIAA channel, and then powered by 302 Sports.
Absolutely. And again, a few minutes left here. So, guys, as we go around the circle one more time, just final words as we enter playoff football here in the first day to Delaware. Nick, I'll start with you here. Just final words as we close out as the playoffs approach.
First off, I'm thankful that we got to do this with what's going on in our world right now and our country, and the coronavirus and what we've had to deal with, having 4 or 5 months off, and then also now dealing with fall winter sports being shut down. I'm just truly grateful that we got to cover sports, because it was something that we all love to do, and I know all the athletes love to play, and it was good for all of us to get back into some competition and some normalcy. So I'm just excited that we get to have all these football games and all the other sports that are playing this week as well.
Absolutely, no doubt about that. Benny, anything on your mind here as we enter playoff season?
Yeah, I'm going to feed off what Nick said about being thankful, because if we didn't have football, I mean, my wife was going to make me go get a job, and retirement's been too cool. But no, just kidding. I'm just glad that we did get a season. But I want to congratulate these schools, these administrators, athletic directors, athletic trainers, players, parents, coaches that did the things they had to do. We had some bumps in the road. Some schools had bigger bumps than others, but we got here. We got through the 7 weeks. We got to the semifinals, and now we get to enjoy some championship football, and it all is credit to all those people between the lines and in those offices that made sure that they maintain the health and safety of their athletes.
Glenn, how about you? Anything on your mind as we enter the playoffs here?
Well, I'm outside the house, and as I watch an awesome sunset from my vantage point, I echo the comments of all the previous sportscasters that went before me. Thankful for the season. Very thankful that the seniors got to play football, because I know how my granddaughter felt when she had her softball season ripped away from her last spring, and she was a senior. So very thankful that the seniors got to play out there. And I think it was Smyrna's coach, Mike Judy, that said, it's really not going to be about the wins and losses. We all want to win. That these kids got the opportunity to get out there and play on the field.
Absolutely, no doubt about it. And Jason, as we wrap up here, any final words?
I'm same with them. I'm, just thankful that that we were able to make it through the season, and to all the teams and like Benny said, everyone, administration, officials, everyone to make it happen, and and safely. And there was a few bumps in the road, but for the most part, it was a successful season. And now, we get to turn our attention to state tournament time.
Absolutely. Again, I echo the same thoughts. A special thanks to everyone out there who made this all possible again. And it's been a very interesting season for all the student athletes and for everyone here in the first state of Delaware with everything happening during the pandemic. So again, a special thank you to everyone, and a special thanks to everyone who was able to tune in to this podcast, if you will, ahead of our playoffs this week. It is a Wednesday afternoon. We've got some soccer games to get to tonight and some playoff matchups for the rest of the weekend. We'll be pretty busy, a lot to get into. So again, a special thanks to everyone for you guys being able to join me here on the line and everyone taking some time out of their day to get this done for you guys. And playoffs right around the corner. So we'll see you next time here on Delaware Live Sports. For Nick Alessandrini, Nick Halliday, Glenn Frazer, Benny Mitchell, and Jason Winchell. Playoffs coming up right here in the first state of Delaware. We'll see you.